there was a for rent sign on the door. She had taped a little envelope and said, Karlos, turn yourself back in to CPS. And this is my email if they need any information on you. Boom. So then I remember my mother, I was about 13, and she said, I don't have time for you. I don't have time for your emotions. I have my own kids to look after. It doesn't get better, but life can be better, if that makes sense. I'm 31 years old. I'm happily married to my husband of, 13 years now. 13 years will be in January. Next month will be 13 years. Let's see what else a little about. I have 2 dogs and a bunny. I have a little gray bunny. Her name's Olenna. We named her after a Lady Olenna of Tyrell from Game of Thrones.
Oh my goodness.
And it's just my passion in life is to communicate what the needs of children, especially children who are experiencing external childcare or external welfare. If you guys hear me say external childcare, I actually am changing my language on that because it's not just foster care and adoption. There are guardianship, kinship, fictive kinship, conservatorship. So I've changed the language to external childcare because that's exactly what it is. It's childcare externally from their primary home. And I'm really excited to be here on the Hey There Parenthood podcast. And it's such a privilege and an honor for Gina and Courtney to invite me here with Drew. So a little bit about me.
Thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much.
And it's crazy because I've been following you for a really long time. I think I want to say since 2020.
At least 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Because you told me about
And I feel like I've learned so much from you. And it's been something, it's crazy to me to see you sitting here with me. Because we've chatted a bunch of times. You've even helped us with some personal matters of learning about a lot about the system. And you have, I've learned a lot from you as an adoptive parent. And so I'm just so grateful that you were willing to even fly out and for us to finally meet in person after talking online for so long that it just feels surreal to even have you here.
Thank you. No, I told my husband last night, I was like, oh my God, they're really like that. Because sometimes, people have their persona and their online persona, and then you get them their code. I was like, no, they are really they present themselves. I think it's even better online or in person than it is online.
That's what I feel the same way. People have asked that, but I feel the same way about you, Karlos. Having a friend over, you don't be what are you doing here? It's oh, I'm glad you came.
Yeah.
I love that.
But we've gotten that a lot, though. People ask us, if our personality online is the same as, in person. And I'm I've got 5 kids. I have no energy to create this whole new persona. What I am, who I am, is who I am. I don't have the energy. I, literally am just trying to survive day in, day out. And the people who do that, nothing's wrong with that. But, I could tell y'all don't get kids. Because, it just takes a lot of mental energy. Yes. And so, for me, it's just easier just to be myself.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing I love about, I was telling my husband last night, I was just it felt so comfortable for me because a lot of the times I have to, especially people online who are they just know the advocacy part. But with that, there's some drama too, And I love that you both are oh yeah, we're up to date. We still support you. I was oh, okay, good. I love that. But because a lot of the times, that's my fear, that abandonment, that fear of abandonment, that fear of rejection. If you know the whole me, if you've seen the whole me, the good, bad, and the ugly, are you just going to be we don't want to be part of that, So it was really nice. I was oh yeah, they know about everything. So I feel comfortable now.
We know about everything. But it's also too, you're very transparent online as well. So I like that.
Literally to a detriment.
It's not bad. I don't think it's detriment because I think I'm a person that truly value people who are very transparent and honest. And so when I see that, and then I have way more respect for you, especially in a way where you're sharing not only just the good stuff but the bad stuff as well. That it makes it easier for me to know who you are, and then I did feel comfortable. When you are explaining or telling me something that I'm having to hear to learn from my daughter, that I'm not feeling well, he's saying this, but then I don't know about this, or later on I find out about something. It's not in a way where I feel I found out about this, I can't trust what he said. No, you've been so honest and transparent about everything about your life that I'm able to know that information, also learn from you, and then when something comes up later on when people try to expose you, you'll be I already told y'all this. Thanks
Yep.
for putting me out there like that. Sure, like when someone shared your mugshot, right? Where you're like, I already told people about this, but like the fact that you found this unsealed like information about my what is it called? Like unsealed documents from
So it was my minor history. I was human trafficked from the age of 16 to 18. And I got arrested like most human trafficking survivors do. It's always the victim who gets in legal trouble. Thankfully, I had a judge that had a foster youth that kind of knew. Because another thing is like, they don't ask questions of like how you got here.
No, yeah. What are you doing out here?
She was like, you were like 17, just turning 18. Like, where are your parents? And I was like, well, girl, but do you know where they at?
Yeah.
Like, they left me on the street at 15. So then she was like, oh, you're literally a victim. And they set me up with resources instead of, and she's like, we're not going to criminalize you because especially as a young Black man with a record like this starting off, it's only going to make your life worse. So, there was still some accountability things of part of that, but then there was also resources. And she also made sure, that's why I was so surprised. That was an expunged record that was sealed. How the hell
did he find that? I don't know.
There are people in the government, there has to be someone who has access to that, right? But I did what I always do. When people try to harm you, when they're running their mouths, you know what you do? You run to the bank. So when they exposed my mugshot, I was like, you know what? Let's make some merch. So I have a mugshot mug. You can go to links in my bio.
I did not know this.
I got a mugshot T-shirt. I made stickers.
This is the epitome of optimizing on your misfortunes.
He had like almost 500,000 followers. So 500,000 people got exposed to my trauma.
You were like, buy my face.
And I'm just like, well, it's already out here. You might as well monetize. I call it monetizing the hate. So when you get hate, run it to the bank and monetize with it. I made like $1,500 on coffee mugs in a week because
good for you.
For some people want my mugshot on a coffee mug for some reason.
Your face, yes. Well, what you said too that you hadn't even seen those mugshots either. So the fact that this person was able to find it, thinking about the story just makes me even more mad. I'm trying to calm myself down because you didn't even see the mugshot. You had shared it, but then it was like, I'm sure it was re-traumatizing for you for him to like reshare the whole thing. And you were like, yeah, I was like sex trafficked and thanks for sharing my mugshot. Like I already shared it, but now you're just like resharing it in a way, not for me to like empower myself by sharing this, but you're trying to make me feel little.
And the reason why I responded the way that I did is because I'm not the only kid that happened to. Anyone who's watching me, that's happening to, they're like, oh my God, this is going to happen to us, right? But now what they saw was like, oh no, Karlos is like, he handled it like a king, like he is. And, people will always have their opinions. People will always have their judgments, but no one has ever lived that life. No one, and even if you have, no one's experience are a monolith, right? Yeah. Only I have had that experience. And as much as that did hurt and re-traumatize me, I have a great support system. Good. I have an amazing support system online and offline. And that's one thing I encourage everyone is to have a support system, especially foster and adopted youth, because the world's nasty. The world's real nasty out there. And a lot of people don't have the greatest intentions for you. So definitely, but don't let this world like try you like that. Don't fight back,
Yeah. And how did you mentioned one resource, like have a support system in whatever way you can build that. Is there anything else that comes to mind? Because it's a really novel experience that you had. And I do think it's hard for someone who's had a background, which, you can share what you will of yours, but at the very least you've shared identities within foster care and adoption and being on the streets at a certain age. So some degree of homelessness, some degree of sex trafficking. To have those identities and that sort of experience, is there anything else that you feel looking back kind of led to that grit, that resilience? How do you build a support system when you're on the street alone? How has that looked for you and what might you say to someone else in a similar situation?
Absolutely. So there's one person responsible for it. I dedicated my first book to him. His name is Perry. I call him my dad, but he's not my dad or like my adoptive father. He's just a man that after I was human trafficked, he was one of the resources that I got. He's a life coach. And I stayed with him for about a year after that. So I stayed with him, I think, between 18 and 19. And he taught me grit, like that grit that you're talking about. He was an older Black man, and he himself came from hard times, and he made himself a millionaire. And he taught me, a lot of people call it tough love, but I just call it love because all love is tough in some way or another, right? He didn't let me play woe is me. That was the biggest thing.
Good, wow.
He didn't let me wallow in my own self-pity, even though I had like every reason
You had
to.
plenty of reasons.
Yeah.
Every reason to be like, oh my God. I remember having this conversation. Pero, you're watching this, I love you. I remember telling him, he was trying to get me to get a job. And I was like, why do I need a job? I'm going to be on welfare. Like, that's like, I was like, I qualify for welfare. Like, I'm just going to get a check from the state. And he asked me, he's like, don't you want more for yourself? And I was like, no, like the check from the state's good. And then what he did was, instead of like making me feel bad, he showed me what life could look like. Like, he was like, well, I just went on vacation here and I just did this and I'm starting this company, I'm starting this business, and I have all of these amazing things. Like, you can have it too. So one of the things that taught me grit was having a person in my life that wouldn't let me say no to myself. Because a lot of us say no to ourselves and we psych ourselves out, and nobody says, hey, you can't say no to yourself. When's the last time somebody checked in and was like, you're absolutely worth more than that? You know, you can do better. Is this all you want for yourself? So him doing that, and not only did he say that, when I did say, actually, I do want more for myself, he taught me how to do an application, how to build my resume, how to fill out a W-2, how to shop for interview clothes really cheaply at the Goodwill, you know, how to balance a budget. But he didn't force that on me. And I think that's the biggest thing is, when you're working with foster youth and adoptees, you want the best for them, but ultimately we can only want for ourselves what we want. And if you don't want it for yourself, you don't want it. But if you do, then there are resources. There is access to get that information. So I got that grit from him. And I didn't get it from him. He activated it.
He modeled
I already had it.
Yeah.
But he was just like, and he told me, you have it. And I didn't believe myself. Now every time I just saw him, he flew down to Phoenix a couple of weeks ago, and we ate $400 worth of tartar.
Oh my God! What? Do you have heartburn? What?
And it was so funny because
I don't want to know the repercussions of $400.
it was delicious, and it was so funny because I was just like, he tried to pay for me. I was like, no, I got it. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me, he just started smiling. He was like, the old Karlos would have just let me take care of him. But I love that you're taking care of not only me, but also everyone and yourself. And he has way more money than me, and he knows that. But it's part of like my pride. It's like, I want to show you, like, hey, I got this, and I want to appreciate. Thank you so much for getting me to where I am, where I can afford $400 worth of beef tartare. You know, without that man, I wouldn't be here sitting with y'all today. Honestly, without his guidance, I wouldn't be sitting here with y'all. I'm forever indebted to him, and I encourage adoptive and foster parents, or even people who didn't adopt and foster. You can just be a great uncle or a great uncle,
Find those people.
Find the people and then build your community. Oh, and the second part of how I built community, travel. So I tell you guys, we roll dice every 5 to 6 years. So I have friends in Florida, good set of friends, great set of friends in Seattle. I'm building a great set of friends in Phoenix. So I have a foster youth in Michigan that just recently got out of prison, and they're doing reentry, and they don't have a lot of access to resources. My Rolodex, I'm like, let me see who I got. Hey, and then he's like, how did you get people to drop off clothes and shoes and boots?
That's
I'm like, because I have
Community.
I have a community everywhere. So that's part of how I built it, is just traveling and moving to different places and having different experiences and building relationships.
And something that strikes me, I have known you since last night meeting, but even just being a part of your platform for so much shorter than Gina, I have so much less history. And something that strikes me is that, do you feel it's easier to build that community because you have learned to be transparent about your own story and self-heal and like be honest, instead of trying to put on a front of, this was never who I am, I don't want to identify with that past history, new Karlos, I'm moving on. Do you feel you would have been a little bit more estranged from the type of people and community that you've built without that sense of transparency? And do you meet other foster youth that have a hard time leaning into, here's all that I am, and here's all these sides of me? Do you encourage them to? Do you think, is it healthy sometimes not to? What does that look like for you? And what might you say to someone about that?
Great question. So when you look at foster youth statistically, like if you can beat the 50% not having a high school diploma, 75% ending up homeless, 70% of girls with uteruses being pregnant by the age. If you can look at the statistics and beat those, you're at a way more advantage than I call them kept kids, or kids who stayed with their parents, because of the one main reason. You had to learn. So the reason why I'm so transparent and I can adjust to so many different scenarios is because I had to live that. I was in 37 foster homes, some white foster homes, some Asian foster homes, some black foster homes, Muslim, Catholic, Baptist. So I've gotten to accustomed, even since the age of 7, to changing myself to adjust to them. But then what I learned is, like, you can't do that.
You can't keep doing that.
You can't keep doing that. You have to just be who you are. In foster care, you really don't get a chance not to be transparent because they give you your whole file. Yeah. So, like, it's
like
everything.
Expose all your,
It just exposes all. And then your file is never like, he got an A. He made friends. It's always the worst things that you've ever done, right?
So you're on the, like, you propose that we should not be getting information like that. Which a lot of adoptive parents want that information because they feel like, oh, I had to rehome my child because I didn't have that information. And I think we should be privy to that information. You're saying, no, we don't need that. Can you speak more on that?
Sure. Well, certain things. So, like, if the child has a history of abusing other children, sure. Okay, you have other children in your home. I don't think that you need all the nitty gritty of everything. But if it's safety concerns, sure, we can say it. Extreme self-harming situations, sure, we can say it. Anything that's going to protect the child from themselves and others, share that. You don't need to know that I kicked a hole in my last foster parent's house.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't need to know that.
Yeah.
You don't, because at the end of the day,
what was the incident around it? No context.
No, unless you're going to be like, well, she slapped Karlos across the face.
That's right.
And called him a name, and then he kicked a hole. Okay, cool, but that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
They including that. They're just like, he kicked a hole. And then what that does is it preemptively puts the foster parents kind of like at a position where they're already assuming.
Hypervigilant.
Yep, they're hypervigilant. And kids pick up on that. Kids pick up on, like, oh, I know how you really feel about me. Also, it doesn't give the child to authentically present who they are.
Or create a relationship.
Like, so you're going in thinking, I'm already going to kick holes in your walls, and you're going to treat me like that. So guess what? I'm going to kick holes in your walls.
More holes in your wall, yeah.
If you would have just came at me as a person, as a parent, and maybe it would have had a hole in your wall. Maybe I wouldn't have. But I think it definitely always happens when you have that preemptive thought of this is going to happen. Another thing is that I just think that kids don't have enough rights for autonomy. Like, it's my history. I don't need these 37 strangers knowing everything about me. You know, how would you feel if everybody, like, random people knew your kids' worst days? Most parents wouldn't like that, you know? But foster youth have to. So the transparent part is, towards the end of my time in foster care, I would just tell people, I'm like, I'm a really bad kid. Like, I would go there and be like, I'm a bad kid.
You're preemptively saying it before they can read it, and, like, trying to save yourself.
I'm trying to save myself from more harm and disappointment and abandonment. And I remember telling several foster parents, like, just go ahead and get rid of me. I already know, like, it's not going to work out because I already know. And my last foster parent before my adoption, her name was Ms. D. And I remember going to her and I was like, you might as well just get rid of us. Like, and I was with another foster brother, and she was like, no, I don't believe that about you. I believe that that's what you've been told about yourself, and you believe that about you. But I don't believe that. And I never kicked one hole in her wall. She was the best foster mom that I've ever had because she didn't treat me like my file. She treated me like a child, like just a kid that has some little trauma. I just think that being transparent and being fully transparent is kind of like a protection for myself, because I don't want anyone to abandon me because they didn't know something.
And is that kind of what you help parents, caregivers, agency workers, whomever, understand is like what trauma-informed care looks like, is how to identify the person outside of the behavior and separate the identity of this person may be doing XYZ on a regular basis or believe or say XYZ, but that's not the real like identity of that child. That's just symptoms of protection, some coping mechanisms, whatever it may be.
One of the things that we also have to remember as parents too is that when we see our children acting in a certain way, it's not that they're acting in a certain way because there's something wrong with them. They're acting in an appropriate way from the trauma that they've had to deal with. And so a lot of people don't want to recognize, like, oh, my kid's acting like this and there's something wrong with them. No, they're acting in a way, like, if you were traumatized, something was wrong with you, most of us would be crying. Most of us would be, like, really, really angry. They're acting in a very appropriate way. And so I want you to go ahead and talk about that as well. But I feel like as parents, we should remember that instead of thinking our kid's a problem child. Yeah. No, they're acting in the exact way they should be after something horrible happens happened to them.
So I made a post the other day. I don't know if you saw about the rage room. So if you guys aren't familiar with a rage room, it's literally like a place where you can break stuff. Like you can just take a hammer or a bat and you can kick holes. Well, I don't think they allow kicking holes. Well, some of them do. But they have like even drywall
Like
pieces that you can like just punch through. Kids have anger, and especially traumatized kids. You got to give them a way to get it out, right? And I teach what to expect, realistic expectations. So a lot of adoptive and foster parents are like, oh, I'm ready. I'm trauma informed. I'm like, are you truly? Or did you just read a book or two about trauma? Do you actually understand like childhood development? Do you actually understand trauma reactions and how trauma works in the brain? Trauma literally like the chemicals in your brain changes. Like I have a whole different brain than I did when I was born because of the things that I went through, right? And if you don't acknowledge that, then you just become the troubled kid, right? Misty, the one foster parent I was telling you about, I didn't kick a hole in the wall, but I remember my foster brother did. I was just like, oh, we finna get beat and she's finna send us to another foster home. She didn't. She took us to McDonald's. We went to Home Depot. We got some drywall stuff.
She made y'all help y'all?
And she taught us. And she
Yes.
taught us how to patch it. And she goes, we will patch every hole that you put in my home. And I'm taking it. And we got allowances. She's like, and I'm taking it out of your allowance.
Good.
Yeah,
I love that.
So you will pay for your own, because those are called realistic consequences.
Yes.
Directly tied to.
Direct.
Well,
It's
what do
not
I call it? I
screaming.
call
It's
it-
not like
it's-
taking your phone away. It's not
Yeah.
taking. No, you broke a hole in my
It's
wall.
a natural consequence.
Natural consequence. There we go. Yes,
right?
right.
So I think a lot of parents lack the idea of natural consequences. And then for kids with trauma, our brains can't connect. Like, I'm screaming, so you're going to take my game away? That don't make sense. If I'm screaming, if I'm misbehaving, take the time to understand.
Go to the party. I don't get,
That was the worst. I didn't get to go to my 8th grade graduation. It was triggering, like seeing everybody there with their families and their loved ones. And I had my adoptive family there, but like,
It's not.
it's not the same. It really wasn't. And instead of realizing that, my mom got angry. And why aren't you grateful? Why aren't you happy? We paid so much for you. And then she took the one thing that I was actually excited for, which was just hanging out with my friends. Yeah, I was misbehaving because I was triggered because I was seeing all of these things. But her lack of knowledge of the trigger just exasperated the entire situation, because now I'm not even mad about the thing. I'm mad that I can't even go to my event. And now I have distrust. And now also that's why I'm really a stickler with time and people coming when they say they are, because if you're a kid and that's a punishment, like things are taken away from you, then everything could be taken away. If I don't make appease these people, they can just take things. And that can affect your whole life, even as an adult. So I think it's learning conscious, like natural consequences is key,
One of the best supports.
because that's how, that's the real world. When we're adults, if you punch
Nobody
someone,
comes out of the bushes with a baton
right?
to whack you up. Like,
if you're an adult and you get mad at someone and you slap them at a bar, they're not gonna be like, I'm taking your PS2. Like that's not, no, the natural consequences, you're probably gonna get slapped back or you're going to jail. Right? So we need to make realistic natural consequences for behaviors so children understand that, there are, just like Isaac Newton says, for every action, there is reaction. Now it's up to you if it's gonna be positive or negative. And I think it's up to parents when they see their children reacting. For every action there is, so even their child's action, there's going to be a reaction for that too. And it's up for parents to kind of positively reinforce a positive reaction.
Absolutely. There's 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative to even just maintain baseline trust in a relationship. You have real natural reinforcements of, hey, because you were on time this time, we have enough time to go get a smoothie on the way. Or that's a natural reaction of your responsibility, of your integrity, of your honesty, of your... The same way that you're drawing the negative ones, putting that much energy into the reward systems or support systems, or that's I think hugely overlooked.
Absolutely.
by people in general.
Well, I think one of the things that
parents.
definitely is overlooked is the fact that we should be allowing our children to feel those feelings as well. I mean, we have a kid who often, the anxiety of things makes her cry, and I'm like, that is totally okay. We can sit here, we'll cry, we can be sad about it, or we can feel however we're feeling. Feel that. And then when you're ready, let's go do what we need to do. So that way you're not in this phase of just staying stuck.
Freeze, yeah.
So freezing, crying, because there's nothing wrong with that. Just learning how to get yourself out of that as well. So allowing yourself to feel sadness, feel the anxiety, or not feel it. I don't want them to want, but feeling your emotions. And then from there, having action afterwards.
Well, that's a really great way to look at it, because what a lot of parents do is stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about, right? Or fix your face. And what I learned as a kid was to compress, compress, and then it'll be the smallest thing.
And then yeah.
It's like you're in a little belt loop.
Right, the smallest
like,
thing. Like even I deal with that as a spouse. I've had to learn like to communicate. Like I was like one of the things with my marriage is because we're not perfect, even though we love each other, we're not perfect. And I'll communicate. I'll tell my husband, I'm like, I say it's escalating. And when I say it's escalating, that means that my pressure is building, and there's been so many little things that I've even tried to communicate with you, but you're not relaying you're not actually listening to the communication. And when I say it's escalating, he knows like I'm at that teapot right before it starts screaming.
Yeah.
Right. And that's my last ditch effort to try to communicate with you.
Which is such a high level of emotional intelligence that inside your own body, you've learned, okay, this is like my I'm going to lose it. It's incredible that with time you've tried to learn.
Sometimes he de-escalates, and sometimes I've learned that
you have to do it yourself.
I can't. No, there's no. So with me, with my trauma, there's no. Once it's escalated, it's escalated. So I have to use my other tools. So removing myself.
Go alone. That's exactly.
Moving myself.
Yeah.
I used to go on car rides. Don't do that because then you're gonna have road rage, and then someone's gonna cut you off. So what I do is I do things that force me to calm down. So go on a walk with my dog, reading, really like anything that'll force you to calm down in isolation. Mm-hmm. That way you can really And I think a lot of people too will be like, oh, let me go de-escalate for 5 minutes. Girl, it'll take me a day and a half to de-escalate myself, right? Especially if I've gotten to that boiling point. And that's okay. And one thing that my husband has learned through our therapy is that like, don't push me to get over it fast. And I think a lot of parents do that too. Oh, you've been moping for 2 days. It might take them 2 days.
I think that's a good point though, because as parents, I personally don't always feel like I have the time to sit there and deal with the kids' emotions. Mm-hmm. And so
I don't care. I'll take all the time.
I know you don't care, but sometimes like there's other things you got to do. Got to get going. We have other kids to take care of, to manage,
that are now,
stuff like that. And so I think a lot of parents do run into this time, and in our society, everything's rushed. Out of all our kids, we have a big age range, and the youngest two just walk slower than the rest. And so, like, I just think if we're like in New York or something where people are just bustling, if we just let them walk their pace, we're going to have so many angry people in us. In the airport, when you're going through the airport, you kind of take their hand and like, come on, let's go.
Drag them along.
And you kind of like speed them up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think that's natural for you to do as a parent. And sometimes it's hard to stop and take a moment. And then on top of that, if we haven't regulated ourselves and our own emotions as adults, like if we haven't learned those coping mechanisms, and I know that personally from my mom, like I feel I have better emotional regulation at this point in my life that my mom even has now in her life, and she's, so much older than I am and has more time. And so as a parent, if you haven't emotionally regulated yourself, how do you
offer that to your child?
To start to offer that regulation or even teach that, or
how you gonna regulate somebody else?
Triggered.
You ain't even regulated.
You
right?
just may be triggered, and then they're triggered, and then you start a cycle.
I think as a parent, I'm not a parent, so this is just opinion. When I hear parents say my child triggered me, that irks me. So I'm like, you are a grown adult, and I understand that they're little humans, right? But you're the only one with the tools. This little baby doesn't have as many tools as you do, just because you've been here longer, right? And you're their parent. So it is not your job. It's not your child's job to not trigger you. They're children. They probably gonna trigger you. They probably gonna trigger you.
Yeah.
It is your job to, like you said, unpack your own emotional regulations and be prepared for that. Parenting is hard.
It is.
It's really hard. There's no rule book. There's no guide. But also, I think that a lot of parents don't know their limits, especially foster and adoptive parents, and they don't know their strengths and weaknesses. And they usually don't have a partner where there's like, hey, this is my strength, I got this. This is my weakness, I got this, right? That trade-off, that give and take. And I think that that's really, really important to know like, your strengths, your weaknesses. Like my weakness is I don't do well when my dog poops on my floor. I just don't. Like that is my weakness. I get really upset. Angered. So my husband don't care. He'll clean it. But my husband's weakness is financial, like keeping things in track during our public social life. That's his. So we both do things that we're strong on, right? And we work off of each other. I think that parents need to consider that too. If you have a partner, know what y'all's strengths and weaknesses are. Being a parent with so many kids, it's sometimes like life, like you said, we got to go here, we got to do this, we got vacations, we got investments, we have all of this. I think a lot of parents, and this is why we see divorce rates go up so much, they lose each other in all of this. But at the end of the day, this started because two people truly loved each other and two people truly were there. And I think a lot of people just lose that. And then your kids see that and they're like, oh, when life gets rough, we can just like ignore our emotions. We can just push through it. Sometimes you just can't push. Sometimes,
and life will fall apart and it's okay. It was worth that.
it was worth, like sometimes you just got to sit down and let the world just like, oh, look, it's just crumbling. I'm going to sit here with my cup of coffee and watch the world crumble around me, you know?
As you guys are talking, I'm realizing, like, Drew talking about emotional regulation and how do we teach our kids if we're not able to do it. I don't know how do we teach kids if you don't know how to regulate yourself. But, like, a lot of the times will, because I feel like I'm not going to say, like, I'm a pro or whatever, but I am very, like, honest with my kids. And I'll show self-regulation, but I'll say it verbally as well in a way so that they understand, so that they can start seeing, like, mommy doesn't always have her cool too. So it would be like, oh my goodness, like, Payne, why did you do this? And I'm like, you know what? I'm really frustrated. I'm going to take a couple deep breaths. Can I talk to you in like 30 minutes? You go do whatever you need to do. I need to go to my room for a little bit. I need to go just talk to dad or whatever. And I've seen him just like the first couple of times I did it, it was like, what is mom doing? Like mom's like, I guess putting herself in timeout, but it's not a timeout.
Right.
I think. And then eventually now where I'm like, I'm so angry right now. Like I need a few more minutes. I'm really frustrated at the situation. I'm going to go take a couple deep breaths and then I'll come back to you. And so he saw me go like this, like 1, 2, 3. And then it wasn't just he wasn't the only person who saw me, but also Tiger saw me too. We're teaching her a lot of emotional regulation, taking deep breaths, because for her a lot of things are just a lot of things are a lot for her sometimes, and nothing's wrong with that, but we're really like in this depth of trying to teach her not only self-regulation but also not letting us be the ones that tell her like, hey, we are seeing this. We're trying to teach her to see it within herself. So like we're at that point of like the whole learning process. Like we were telling her, we're seeing the owl brain or watchdog brain or puppy dog brain. And now we're trying to see, well, what do you see right now? What do you think? Like, what do you think?
Does that feel like in your body? Yeah.
And so she saw me counting and she's like, Mommy, like, are you okay? Do you need anything around you? Like, I see that you're having a hard time. Like, do you need like coloring book? Because we give her coloring books a lot.
I love that.
And
need a color to calm down.
Yeah, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna take a couple more deep breaths and then I'll talk to your brother. But like, she watched me do that, and I'm really happy that she got to see me do that because one, I was really frustrated. Whatever Payne did made me just heated, but that they saw me have an emotion. They knew that I was able to express my emotion. But I also tell them all the time, just because I'm angry doesn't give me the right to call you certain names, doesn't give me the right to yell at you, treat you badly.
I call that emotional accountability. It's really important for kids to see that it's okay to hold yourself accountable emotionally, but still feel the feelings. Like, right? Like, even if you do say something mean, right?
Apologizing afterwards.
That's right.
Hey, calm yourself down first, regulate yourself, and then take emotional accountability and say, hey, I was really upset.
It doesn't make it okay.
But it didn't make it okay that what I said to you. And I say that to my husband. And then
I say that too,
I tell my husband all the time. I'll come up like, I'll call myself and I'll get there. And it's not like because I feel guilty. It's just, that was just wrong. It was wrong to say,
not okay to
and it's not okay.
Way.
And then he's like, it's okay. And I'm like, no, it's
not.
not okay. It's not okay. Let me hold myself accountable. Because he's just such a sweetheart.
And that's a good thing to learn is like how to accept that interaction. Like I didn't see modeled for me very often, but I had a parent from person to person, adult to adult, but I had a parent that did that to me as a child. So my parent would say if there was an explosive something or a hurtful something, hey, I'm sorry, that was a hard moment for me. I'm sorry how that impacted you. And not expecting me to say it's okay ever. And so I've now practiced a just thank you response.
Or I tell my kiddos, I tell them
like, thank you, I appreciate that. And like, I might not be ready to forgive. I may not, like, I don't have to have any sort of making you feel better response. I can just like, thanks for acknowledging that. That was hard.
Well, we teach our kids, what is it? I accept your apology. I'm not ready to hear your apology right now. I tell my kids it's not okay to say it's okay. Because you're kind of telling them like, oh, okay, it's okay to do what you did was fine. Yeah. I don't want you to say that. So you can say like, I accept your apology. I'm not ready to hear your apology right now. I can't remember the other ones that I tell them to say. I'm sure
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they said, thank you. I don't accept your apology.
Oh, yeah. I tell them they can say
So-
that I don't accept your apology as
Yeah,
well.
I'm still working on my stuff.
And that's all okay. And so I think it's really important that we teach our kiddos to be able to say stuff like that, because a lot of kids are just said, okay, you have to tell them it's okay. Like after they apologize, I'm like, no, it wasn't okay. My kid's apologizing, or someone's apologizing to you. There's a reason why they're apologizing.
Something
They're recognizing what they did was wrong.
It's okay not to forgive them. It's okay not to just be like, hey, listen, I love you, but nope.
Yeah. All right.
It's okay. Like, I'm not going to
Alleviate you
from feeling bad, you know? But yeah, every relationship has that little bit of give and take, and really holding everyone accountable and making sure everyone feels safe. Because if you can hold yourself accountable for things that you've done, it makes other people feel like they can hold you accountable as well without fear of retaliation.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good example that you show your kids that, hey, I'm gonna hold myself accountable emotionally and tell you what I'm going through, because then that puts up a good mirror for them to say, hey, when I do something bad, mom's just gonna say either she forgives me, she doesn't forgive me, or things that we need to work on. And they don't. There's no unknown.
Yeah.
They definitely know, and they still might make the bad decision, but at least they know the outcome, right?
And that's the biggest, I think, like talking about triggers and how your kids can trigger you. For a child that's experienced neglect or abuse or not healthy attachments growing up, it feels that unknown can be like
The worst.
one of the biggest anxiety inducing. Like, it's not even what you do to me. I would rather you do all the worst repercussions than that unknown gap of like, they could do anything and I have no clue how to prepare myself. I have no clue what it'll be. That safety that's created of like, we model, this happens, I'm going to say out loud to you, I don't know yet. I need to talk to daddy before I have a consequence for you. Or I need to calm down before we talk about what happened. Whatever it is, it's that like modeling out loud to the child. Where do we stand? Where do I stand? What can you expect going forward? Even if the answer is, I don't know yet. You know, I'm going to go take a minute and I'll circle back to you later tonight. I'll pull you aside and we'll talk about what the repercussions of this action is. But like, I'm not ready yet, but I'm going to tell you that, not just stonewall you, not just lash out at you. Yeah.
I tell people, like, even when you're in a disagreement with a friend or a family member or anyone, for me, I need a time limit. Like, I need not even a time limit, but a time frame. Because I do that. And then I start to create these scenarios and I spiral like, oh, they hate me.
Yeah.
And then they're thinking about.
Because it's the silence.
Right.
Of it.
And it's the silence of it. Right. So now, like, when I have disagreements with friends, I'm like, hey, it's okay not to talk right now. Can we schedule something? Like,
That's
if it's,
me.
can we put
That's
it on the
what I
book? Like, I schedule my uncomfortable conversations. So we're
what
going to
I
have an uncomfortable conversation on Thursday at 5 p.m.
That
Okay,
is
great.
me to a
And people
T.
think that's so weird.
I don't
But
think
for
that's
me,
weird.
like,
That's what I
that
do.
works for me because I know what's coming.
That's right.
I know what to expect. I can gather my thoughts, my
defend
concern.
myself, which
Yep.
doesn't sound ideal, but is healthy.
Yep.
To
And
say,
then when I'm
ready for it.
there, I don't feel like I'm trapped in a corner. I'm like, all right, I'm ready for him. Well, open up my binder. This is where the issue started.
So, Karlos, I would love to talk about how at 15 you were not living at home with your parents, and why you ended up going like in a situation of, like in trafficking.
So I'll give you guys like a quick rundown of my life in a quick nutshell. So I was born in Detroit City to the youngest of four. I have an older sister. Her name is Jatia. She's passed away with my mother, unfortunately. I have an older brother named Alex, my brother Timothy, and then myself. My dad went away for the war on drugs in the 1990s. If you know anything about the war on drugs, it was just like he had literally a gram of marijuana, did way too much time. Because of that, my mother then took over his like drug dealing operation. My mother was a child welfare too. She was a foster kid in and out of like group homes and mental hospitals. She had her first kid at like 17, 18, 16 or 17. So unfortunately, we were removed. I did write a book about my time in foster care and about why we were removed. That one's called War to the State, Memoir of Foster Care, available everywhere books are sold. There you go. So a little self-promotion there.
It's Ward of the
Ward
State.
of the State.
Ward
Yep.
of the State.
A memoir of foster care. It's Ward of the State, memoir of foster care. I ended up going into foster care around 7 or 8. I jumped around about 37 different foster homes until TPR happened. TPR is termination of parental rights. I always say it because people are like, what's TPR? Right? So TPR happened. I was the youngest of 4, so I was made adoptable. They did like this whole commercials for Tuesday's Child, where I was on the news, and they just like told all the great things about me, and my adoptive parents saw that. My adoptive parents weren't foster parents. They weren't, they were just random people that just wanted a child, right? My mom had infertility issues. By the time I was adopted, I think she said she was on like number 8 or 9 miscarriages. And these were like second trimester miscarriages. And we're Catholic. So that's 9 or 10 funerals, like, which I like. It's crazy that Catholics do that, but every soul at conception is a human life, right? Our family cemetery is very interesting because they're all just there, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was talking to Gina a little bit about this in my adoption. I got adopted from Karlos Social Services, which is a Christian-based agency. I don't believe that we should have religious-based agencies for foster care, just because
Yeah, I agree.
not every foster youth is Catholic, not every foster youth is Christian. And I just think that it really just kind of narrows who can foster and their ideologies. But unfortunately, they gave her suggestions that were really harmful, like reattachment therapy, conversion therapy. They were just telling her like to put me into the church and pray my gay away and pray my sins away. And that was my mom's solution for a lot of things, was prayer. Like, Hail Mary it away. I'm so sorry. I'm not talking about the football throw either. It's just like you can't Hail Mary trauma away, unfortunately. So between 8 and 15, I had been to a troubled teen institution for 2 years. I had been to a conversion therapy for like 6 months. They had put me through a year and a half of reattachment therapy. So all of those things that had happened really just did not I didn't attach. And the crazy thing, like most adoptive parents who struggle with infertility, as soon as I was adopted, she started walking them babies out. It was like pregnant, gave birth, boom. Pregnant, gave birth, boom. Pregnant, gave birth, boom. So then I remember my mother, I was about 13, and she said, I don't have time for you. I don't have time for your emotions. I have my own kids to look after. And that's when she started sending me away. When I was 15, I had come back from my troubled teen institution. I saw a kid chop off his finger with a hatchet. I saw a kid shatter his ankle. Another kid almost died from gas inhalation. I fell off my horse and got kicked by it, and I broke 4 ribs. An essay galore. It's called Mount Carmel Youth Ranch. Y'all should look it up. The news reports about it now. They're being sued. They're all over the internet right now because they just keep renaming themselves and just keep rebranding when they're trying to get away from what they've been doing. So what they do is they come to your home at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they like literally like put a thing over your hood over your head, and there's people you don't know, and they grab you out of your home. They throw you in a van. I got thrown into a van. They put me in like little plastic restraints. My mom and my aunt were there. They didn't tell me anything what was going on. We drove from Michigan to O'Hare. And then we flew from O'Hare to Billings, Montana, and then drove from Billings to Wyoming. And then they open the door and they just push you out. And the van takes off. And then there are these people, and they're like, here's your camping set. Here's your gear. Like, these are the rules. Don't mess it up. And then I was in a wilderness program where you have to like make your own food, get your own food. You have to cattle ranch. You have to have your own horse and things like that. So what that place taught me, it was kind of abusive, but it also taught me hyper independence because you couldn't rely. That was their whole thing.
Literally down to the food.
Down to like be independent upon yourself. So when I came back home, I was hyper independent. You know, I was like, I want a job. I'm going to go get my own job. I want to do all these things. And I think my adoptive mother was kind of hurt at that. I think she thought I would come back and
all tender
and be like, "Oh, let me love you."
I'm ready to be,
No,
submissive.
like I was essentially like a man. I was essentially, it did what it was supposed to do, and I think that created a lot of friction. And then she was also pregnant again at 6 months old, and I was getting bigger. And what the thing that ended me on the street, what I would say, it wasn't my fault, but now I look back at it, I used to think it was my fault. It was never my fault. Because if you're under 18, really, the parents are the parents.
Yeah.
I remember I had bought a phone from Alltel. Y'all remember Alltel?
Yeah.
I bought a phone. I'm aging myself now. I had gotten a phone from Alltel, and my coworker, because I had a job at Panera Bread, and my coworker put it on her plan. I was talking to my friend, and my mom took my phone out of my hand, and she slammed it on the ground. I had forgotten to do a chore or something. And at that point, I was paying rent to them. Mind you, they got $2,500 a month from the state. So they took a fourth of all of my paychecks, and I wasn't allowed to touch any of the food in the fridge unless I paid for it. I was pretty much like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Right? So I remember she took my phone, I threw it, and that was my first time ever getting in her face because I was always intimidated by her. But being in Wyoming, like being a cowboy made me a man. And I was like, don't you ever in your life touch my property. Don't you ever. Like I would literally, that was my first time standing up to her. And I told her, I said, if you touch me again, you touch my property, I will make sure me and your children get taken away from CPS. I think that triggered her because then she put me against the wall, and I will remember this for the rest of my life. She said, and I think that was the day that she decided to leave me. She said that it'll be a cold day in hell before I affect her children, and they'll go through anything that I went through because look how I turned out. And then she said she regretted adopting me. She said that she could have just waited because God gave her children if she was just patient enough. So pretty much saying like she just regretted taking me in. And then she said, if you dare raise your voice and come at me again, I will call the police and they'll put you in prison, and I'll make sure you'll never see the light of day. So the next weekend, my neighbor and coworker, her name's Heather, love you, Heather. Her family were going to Daytona for the weekend, and they invited me to go. And I asked my mom, and my mom never said yes because she hated them because like they were actually good people. And she was like, yeah, you can go. I was like, oh, wow, cool. So I went to Daytona. Had a great, fantastic time with my friends Heather's family. We were there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We came back Sunday, and my stuff was in front of the yard. And I was like, wow, why is my mattress, my clothes, like my toys, everything was just in our yard. There was a for rent sign in the lawn, and on the door, she had taped a little envelope with an email on it and said, Karlos, turn yourself back in to CPS, and this is my email if they need any information on you. And there was my birth certificate, my social security card, and my 2 scrapbooks were sitting on the door. The house was completely empty, and that was it. That was the last time that Wednesday before I left, that was the last time I had seen them. I haven't seen them since.
So you mean somebody like she just left her stuff on the door, moved out.
They moved to a whole different city. It turned out they moved to a city about 4 hours south where they live now from where we were.
But you were adopted.
How pre-planned was that? Because that seems so like...
She had a family of 5 people. You can't...
So fast.
You can't...
Jobs and...
Yeah. Well, my dad's a business owner, so that was his thing. Like, he could move wherever he wanted to move.
Okay.
But I do definitely believe that it was pre-planned. I've spoken to her. I talked to her, and I did an interview with her 3 or 4 years ago, and I asked her, and she goes, oh, yeah, your father and I knew. We just figured you would go and put yourself in foster care. I didn't. I was so afraid of foster care because of what I had survived. That was June. My birthday's in July, so I was like, I'll be 16 next month. I can emancipate myself. I can get my GED. I can do this. I stayed with my friend Heather for like 2 or 3 months. I got my GED. Her mom had cancer. She had stage 4 lung cancer. She was super sick. So like she was going into the hospital, and their other son was getting in trouble with the law. So I just felt like a burden. Mm-hmm. And one day I lied to them. I said, hey, I found a place. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, great. Like they were super happy for me. It was a complete lie. I did not find a place. I packed up my stuff, and I was homeless for a couple weeks. When I say packed up my stuff, I left most of the, like I couldn't bring furniture and stuff. So I had my clothes, my 2 scrapbooks, which are huge to carry around with you in a backpack. And then just like my personal paperwork. I was homeless for a little bit, and I was still working. While being homeless, like living in parks. And it was Florida, so it wasn't like that bad with the weather, but and it was summertime, so couch surfing, going into friends' houses. If you're a homeless teenager, check out the car lots because they never lock them cars. All the cars you can sleep in a car. Oh. They don't lock the cars. On the some lots they do, but most of the lots they don't lock the cars, so you can just like go in the car and sleep. I spent a lot of time sleeping in new cars, and then randomly I saw this guy came up. He came to me in my job, and he was like, "Oh, you're really cute. Da da da. Can I take you on a date?" Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Sure." And like he was. Now I know what it was. Love bombing. Like that's exactly what it was. Like he was 26. I was just turning 16. Yeah. When our first date, I told him a little bit of like what date
happening. Yeah.
I was like, hey, like I'm homeless. Like this is my situation. And he's like, oh, we're gonna get you an apartment. We're gonna get you a car. We're gonna get you enrolled in college. So I was like, oh, like the Lord has sent me a savior. That wasn't the case. First of all, it started off like, hey, do this with me. And I was like, fine, I think you're cute. I'll do that. And then it was do this with my friend and my friend's friend, and then complete strangers. Mm-hmm. And then it turned to do this or you won't have a home. Or you won't. And then the days that I said no, it is getting choked out. It is getting slapped across the face. And ultimately, he knew that I was still a minor and I was under his complete control because if I didn't live there, I would be back homeless. and then I will end up right where I was. And for me, and I tell people this all the time, human trafficking doesn't look like what you see, and sex trafficking doesn't look like what you see on crime and like Law and Order. Sometimes it looks like that, like with a van and a dungeon in the basement. Like sometimes, but sometimes it literally looks like your coworker or someone that you're going to school with, and you don't know what they're going home to. You don't know what their living situations are. How I got out of that was, one, I got arrested for, there was a sting operation. Because then they just started advertising on Craigslist. Like, hey, come, like there's a 17-year-old boy, there was a sting operation where it was actually the police, because there was a huge thing going around with kids being sex trafficked. And I remember being so scared, because I was like, they're going to find out and I'm going to get in trouble. And I remember the officer just being so sweet. He's like, no, you're going to be okay. Like, you're going to be okay. Just tell us the truth. And I told him the truth. I was like, I've been on my own for like 2 years. I've been on the street. I just remember crying my eyes out. And at the time I had another boyfriend, like a guy that I was trying to like talk to, who was actually really sweet. He knew kind of what was going on, but he didn't know the full extent. And he came and bailed me out. And he was like, that's who introduced me to Perry. He bailed me out of jail, and I was like, I don't have any place to go. They're trying to work up for some resources for me. And he goes, I know this guy. He's a life coach. He has a huge home. I'm sure that we can get you. He'll let us stay.
Somewhere to stay.
Just somewhere until we can get you some resources. And then after I met Perry, he did not want me to go. He'll tell you to this day, I did not want him in my house. He had just gotten all his kids out.
Yeah.
And he was like, I was like enjoying my freedom, and I did not want anything to do with it. Also, like, he had this kid who was sexually traumatized, and he didn't want anyone making any assumptions or accusations.
That's a vulnerable spot for him.
Really vulnerable. But he took the risk. And like I said, without him, I wouldn't be where I am today, because then he taught me all the things that we spoke about before. So that's kind of how I got into it, and then how I got out of it.
And the stats show that one adult, you're not, I don't think you're an anomaly, that it took just that one person that believed in you, saw you, was there for you, helped you get on your feet. Numbers don't lie. Stats really back that up, that for most kids in foster care with the background similar to yours, like, it just takes someone there for them.
Yep.
Well, I think it's so mind-blowing is that the fact that your parents just left, they left you a little note on the door, taped it up, but they were still receiving payments from the government.
Absolutely. They were receiving $2,500 a month until I was the age of 19. Their contract was technically until I was 21. But we ran into an issue when I enrolled in college, because, as you all know, with FAFSA, you need your parents' tax information. I didn't have their tax information, so I had to appeal. And when I appealed, they had me prove. They're like, you need to prove that you don't know where they are. And I was like, how do you prove
you don't know something? Yeah.
And I remember one lady in financial aid, she was like, you don't know where your parents are? I was like, no. She was like, have you heard of Google? I was like, oh, girl, you finna get slapped.
Oh, my gosh.
But what I did was I had to get affidavits from, like, Heather's parents, the people that were there, my job, my landlord, people who are in my personal life. Perry did an affidavit for me. Another thing that really bothers me is that my parents never received any consequences for this. If you go on my social media page, there is a playlist that says Conversation with My Adoptive Mom. She admits what she did. And she says, you chose that. You chose to leave. You didn't try to find us.
How do you expect a 15-year-old?
You didn't turn yourself in like you were supposed to. What? And it's literally like, to this day, she still says it's my fault that I ended up human trafficked, because I should have just turned myself in. But what she wanted to do, and a lot of people, because that's technically abandonment, right? That's illegal. You can't just abandon your children.
She wanted to say you're the one that left.
She wanted me to say that I ran away and go to the system and check myself in, which would have ended
But
up me
was
in
it
a
Heather's
trouble
parents?
Heather's parents were like, they let me stay there, and they would have definitely, but they were on the thought process of, let's get him to 16, because I was only a month away from 16, and let's get him emancipated. But
no, I was saying Heather's parents could probably attest to the fact that, we went on this trip and came back, and Karlos found this letter on the door.
Her mom died like a couple months after, but her dad's still alive, and Heather's actually been on my podcast and like told, like, yeah, we came home and Debbie had all of your stuff outside, and Heather like kind of described how she helped me move and things like that. I believe that the number one issue why they left me like that is because of they could have brought me back to CPS They could have, and they wouldn't have had an abandonment charge. What would have happened is I would have told what was happening, like the abuse, the kneeling on rice, the food restriction, the locking in rooms. All of their kids were going to get removed. And there was going to be at least an investigation, right? That's what I believe that they were afraid of.
Or even the money, losing the money as well. I
Yep.
mean, I'm sure they banked on that money every month.
Oh, yeah. So another thing that I talk about, which is why I don't believe like adoptions should have stipends. When I was adopted, my parents were going through a foreclosure and a Chapter 8 or Chapter 7, one of the chapters, I don't know. They were going through a bankruptcy. And I look back at it now as a child welfare advocate. It's like, how did you get approved going through a bankrupt? Did they not?
Yeah,
But
you're supposed to show financial stability.
Michigan got sued for what they did in the early 2000s because they weren't doing any backgrounds. They were just like, you're not a criminal. There you go. They weren't actually doing financial background checks. They weren't doing adequate home studies. And they did get sued for that because it happened to thousands of children, right? And the thing that's really sad about that also on the flip side, it's not just the money, but it's also the resources. So I qualified for free college, never got it. I qualified for all of like financial aid assistance, housing assistance. You need your adoption contract to get access to those. I don't have my adoption contract. And then when I go to the state to say, hey, I need my adoption contract, they say, we can't give you your adoption contract because it's not a contract with your name on it. It's not it's my parents' contract. And they're like, go to your parents. I'm like, they don't speak to me. Like, I don't know where they are. So it just causes a lot of legal issues in life that a lot of people don't recognize.
How were you able to navigate like the fact that you didn't have your adoption contract or anything like that?
I just took out student loans.
Yeah, just did it yourself.
I just did myself. I'm finna cry because I freaking hate. I'm still paying. I owe $37,000. I took out about $50,000 in student loans. I knew I wanted to go to college. Yeah. I knew I wanted to get an education, so I just did it myself and got my Pell Grant. I applied for as many grants as I could, and then the rest of it, I just pulled out loans.
Which is crazy because you had the ability to have like someone to
Completely
help
free
you,
college.
free college, and because your parents like abandoned you, neglected you, like you couldn't get paperwork that would have made it so much easier for you.
And that's what really angers me. But I look back at it now and I was like, you can't change the past.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
It's so crazy to me that like just such blatant neglect in a lot of ways, like adoption should be that you're that family, right? Legally, you're part of that family, but because you were adopted, it's like there's so many loopholes. Like I think of if someone took their biological child at 13, 14, 15, I think any age under 18 and literally packed up the house and left and that child came back, what would the news report on it be? What would the consequences be? What would the outcry be? Would it just be, yeah, sorry, it was that child's fault because they didn't find us or follow us to the next city?
So
That's just so. I think that's what's mind blowing.
Whenever I work with adoptive or foster parents and they say that my teenager ran away, red flag. Kids don't run away. First of all, kids don't run away from happy homes. Sometimes they do, but they usually come back, right? Because it's tough out there. Nobody wants to sleep on the street and like pick their food out the trash and stuff. Like no one wants to do that. Like you might do it for a day or two and like, I'm going back home, you know? I might have not liked mom and dad's rules, but it's better than sleeping on the street, you know? And two, what an easy way for people not to look for us.
They wanted this when it's always phrased as like...
Like how many signs have you seen or stories have you seen where the kid was, they ran away. They went off and found a boyfriend and went, no, we didn't run away. A lot of the times we were abandoned and no one's looking for us because who looks for runaways? No one. No one looks for a runaway. The kid wants to leave. Who's going to look for a runaway compared to them saying, oh, yeah, I just left my kid at home. Like you said, like, I just packed up and left. Everyone's like, wait, what? But then also, like, I never had a conversation with because I have aunts, uncles, godparents for my adoptive family. What did they tell y'all?
Yeah. Why
I didn't even think about that.
Dropped out of your life.
What did they tell you guys?
I'm sure they said you ran away.
Have you talked to them? Any of
I'm
them?
sure it didn't work out, and Karlos decided to go back.
Away.
So I did talk to my brother. So my dad's oldest son. He and I stayed connected. I'm actually going to go see him in April. He has not spoken to them since they did that to me. So he actually just recently started talking to my dad again. He refuses to talk to Debbie because Debbie was like the main person to do the abuse to me. I think that they told people that I was in a program because they had already put me in so many programs
natural.
that it was like I was already in like conversion programs, trouble teen program. So like, oh, he's in a program until he's 18.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I was on the street homeless. So
Yeah.
I actually have never talked to one of my aunts or uncles, but I'm pretty sure they probably just told them I was in a program because that's kind of what the scenario was looking like anyways from the beginning.
Yeah.
But now, even as an adult, I've seen them watch my content. I've seen them comment,
Wow.
and y'all didn't say anything. And you're protecting your sister or your daughter or your aunt, and you shouldn't when you guys were there and you saw what happened. So,
So I'm going to read this Reddit story. Is it possible for adult survivors of severe childhood neglect to become emotionally adjusted adults? To keep it short, I was abandoned by my parents long ago. I don't remember their faces. Haven't seen my father since 4 and my mother since 9. I've had this traumatic childhood filled with neglect, living in multiple homes until I was set off at 16 to this big wide world. I turned out okay considering I did good, but at 30 years old, I feel emotionally stunted, having trouble with confidence and self-love. I kind of actually hate myself. Oh, this is so sad. I have disguised as well, though, putting up a facade to survive. Now people will say you need therapy. Agreed, but I am not in the position to afford it. Even if I did, I'm not sure how it would change the fact that my parents did not love me, the ones who created me. I internalized this for 30 years, and as a result, I often feel like I have the emotional mindset of a damaged child. Like I am not an adult at all. Is it weird feeling half-baked? Does anyone with similar experiences feel like they outgrew the trauma? Am I going to have to spend the rest of my life faking it? Man, this is really sad. Can people who have experienced severe neglect as children really become emotionally adjusted adults, even with therapy, or will they always have problems?
her own parents, like birth parents, did that to her.
I mean, I think my first response just wants to be just to reach out to her and be like, no, like it could happen. Just as a hopeful person, you would hope that anybody would be able to overcome like the trials and tribulations they have in their life. But I understand like these aren't just everyday, like my car broke down and
hard time.
I got to get a new car. And like, these aren't just everyday hard times. This is like, she's saying like 30 years of just stuff that's compressed and packed. And at the end of the day, like, I don't know if she is going to ever feel as well adjusted as she wants or feel quote unquote like normal.
Well, what is normal?
You know.
I tell my clients this and kids this all the time. Normal doesn't have a look. Normal is you. You are normal. And if I were to talk to her, if she was asking me that question, I would say it does get better eventually, but your trauma will never go away.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
always going to be there. You can definitely learn tools to navigate and make it a little bit easier. But even with the best therapy, I've been in therapy for 10 years. I feel like I have a good tool set, right? And then I literally lost a home deal. And it brought me right back, like
Flared it
10
up.
years of like doing good emotional work. I'm right back at that little 7-8-year-old who didn't have a home. That's okay. Just like anything that you're doing in life, that's like an addiction. I think that trauma is like an addiction. Yeah. You're going to relapse. You're going to have hard days and you're never going to be over it. You live with it.
It's part of you.
It's part of you. Like we said earlier, your brain chemically changes. It's kind of being like, what you're asking me is, how do I unchange my brain?
Yeah, or change my skin color or my eye color
You
or my
can't.
hair pattern. Like its hair almost feels like a ridiculous but like helpful analogy in my mind is like you can change the texture, you can have it straightened all the time, you can do whatever. But like are you able to go into your body and change how it's growing out of your head? Like no. And that's because of how human and child development works. Like she's unable to go back and tell her small child self that was learning, is it healthy to be in the world? Am I loved and wanted in the world? There's a window for that developmentally. and it's young,
It's
right?
a small window. It really
infancy
is.
To
To
5
3
or
years
6.
old.
5, yeah, like
Yeah.
it's
I think,
under
yeah.
5.
I think it's
And
under
so
5, yeah.
starting from newborn, does someone come for me when I cry? So like that really influential period of, am I loved, am I wanted, is someone there for me in a consistent, warm way? If you've missed that period, it's not to say you can't have a life where you find and try and prove to yourself over and over, I am loving, or in therapy or through healthy relationships, re-foster and kindle environments where you reparent that part of yourself and try and heal. But I don't think, I think she would be disappointed with an expectation of, is there ever going to be a day if I've done all that work where it's like that didn't happen to me? It's just, I just don't think that's a thing.
No, but
with trauma.
But to give an encouragement, there's never going to be a day where you feel like everything's perfect. But there are times. I remember I was on the beach in Costa Rica, and someone, this guy, like caught a fish and made homemade ceviche like right in front of me, and I was getting a full body massage. And then at that moment, I was like, it got better. It's like, right?
Yeah.
So like, it's never, trauma's still in me. It's still in me, but there are things. Find your joy, shine your light, find a way to shine regardless of what trials and tribulations that you've been through. What I found is, for me, helping other people helps me. That's why I continue to help people.
Yeah, be an advocate.
Yeah. So if she's listening to this, anyone that's listening to this, it's not going to get better as far as emotionally. The trauma will always be there. But I do believe that the skills that you hone in, that hyper independence, that hyper confidence, your life will get better. And I see a lot of people with trauma end up being successful people, really successful people. Because one, we don't got a whole lot of choice. Either you got 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
You gon'
It's over for you or you're soaring. Yeah.
There's not any mediocrity in trauma. Like
Yeah.
either like you meet all the statistics and you become a statistic, or you soar. There's not really anyone that's like, you know, like it's
So-so.
either or. And I think that needs to change. But I do think that there is something to be said that it doesn't get better, but life can be better, if that makes sense.
It does.
Last night, I was on the phone with my husband, and right after I hugged you and left, I called my husband. The first thing I said was, do they truly feel like that way? And he said, why did you, because he knows me, and he goes, did they give you any signs? I was like, no, it was fantastic. He goes, then why are you projecting that onto yourself? Why are you worried about them liking you when they already told you how they feel? You need to trust.
Yeah.
Not
like
only
you,
yourself,
shown otherwise. Yeah.
right? Till show, yep, trust but verify. And part of verifying is to look at the behaviors. Have they shown any? And I was just like, but how can these people love? Like, how can they respect and love me this way? He goes, Karlos, you're amazing.
You're
like,
amazing. Yeah.
that's why. Like that, there are people
You're
who are just
so
gonna,
lovable. Yeah.
like, really. Then he says, you need to stop trying to make people hate you. Just because you're
protect
unsure,
yourself.
to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's like, you're going to abandon me one day. So let me just go ahead and justify in my brain a reason why you would abandon me so I can be okay when it happens.
Which is full circle to Gina saying that's the healthiest response you learn to do.
Yeah.
That is natural, expected, healthy in the larger scheme of things. You're trying to mature and grow beyond that, but like that's so understandable that with the context and background that you have, that your little inner self that wants to keep you safe is good at its job, and holding and honoring that and saying, like, younger self, like, I hear you saying, watch out for people, you don't know them like that. What if they actually don't care about me? What if they're actually gonna like stab me in the back or whatever? Thank you for trying to keep me safe.
Yeah.
You did that for a long time, and I'm resilient, and I'm here today because of that.
I've had to
but
learn.
we're moving beyond that.
I've had to learn to tell little Karlos to sit down.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm like, I love you, buddy.
I hear
and
you.
you got us through so much.
That's right.
But
We're-
I got it
we're
now.
growing beyond that now.
You can take a break.
That's right.
You can, and I take care of my inner child. Like I
That's
go
right.
to amusement parks. I go do things like the Flintstone Park that I was showing you guys. Like I do little things for little Karlos to show him like, hey, I got you.
That's right.
Because he's still inside of me.
That's right.
But then sometimes I got to tell him, hey, buddy, you look traumatized. Okay, the whole world is
grown past
you've
that.
grown past it. The
Yeah.
whole world ain't out to get you. But like you said, thank you,
you.
for putting it in the back of my mind. You know, because I also know the world ain't nice. You know,
Yeah.
So
You're
it's a
trying to
good-
always keep me safe out there.
Absolutely.
Like, thank you for having my back.
Absolutely.
But I'm learning how to trust with transparency. I'm learning how to be lovable. So,
What did you need from your parents that you didn't receive?
The biggest thing that I needed from my parents was racial knowledge of how to navigate the road as a Black man. The trauma and all that stuff, I can learn it through therapy, self-healing, books. What has been the biggest obstacle is how to navigate our white supremacist society without having any of the tools. I remember my parents are very conservative Christians. They don't see color. I was raised to say that either you're a good one or you're a thug. One of the biggest things that my parents failed was to prepare me that the world doesn't see me as an innocent person or even an innocent child. I'm a Black man, and the world will automatically give me that. And my privilege that I had with them being white people would not
Save you, protect
save
you.
me. There's a YouTube video. It's called "Open Carrying While Black." I'm a Second Amendment supporter. I believe in our Second Amendment. Like, if they gonna have him, I'm gonna have him too. And I remember I got robbed, and I called the police. I called them.
And then you were perceived as that.
They came at me
Yeah.
drawn, and I was in the same instant. I was like, I have a $60,000 Mercedes. I'm the one that called you. I have all. They don't. It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't matter how articulate you are. It doesn't matter
What
how-
you're wearing,
what you're wearing,
what you're driving.
what your hair looks like. It doesn't matter. So I think the biggest thing that my parents could have taught me is how to navigate racism. And I think a lot of white folks don't know how to do it, which is why when people ask me, should white parents adopt children? I say majority of them no. And it's not saying that they can't be good people, but this is life and death that we're working with here, especially in our current political climate.
As a parent, neglect is not just what you do, it's what you don't do sometimes.
Yep.
So not having those conversations with you, even trying to have the conversations of like, hey, you may be treated differently. I don't know what that means or what that looks like, and I can't really help you with that. But
that's kind of what I talk about when you said something. You said you don't know. Essentially, you don't know what you don't know, right? Then don't do an adoption. So that's like me adopting a child with cerebral palsy and not ever doing one iota of research on it, but expecting love to be enough.
Carry you through.
It's not, babe. It's not. At this point in our society, being Black is a minority. We already know it's a minority, but I almost say it's a disability because we have certain things that we're just not. They're not set up for us. Like, it is not, certain communities aren't set up for us. Certain colleges aren't set up for us, right? We have a disadvantage in a lot of these areas. And I think that when parents go into adoption saying, love is enough, I love these children, and they don't do any research, they don't do any history. I think we were talking about it last night at dinner. To fix any system, you gotta understand the system.
Yeah.
If you're going to take care of a Black child, you gotta understand Blackness. Now, are you gonna have lived experience as Black? Nope.
No.
But you can get and especially with TikTok, YouTube, Google, we have technology and information at our hands. And that's still not going to be enough. That's where I say cultural and biological mirrors come in.
That's right.
What neighborhoods do you live in? Is it diverse? Is this child
What
seeing-
mentors do you have? What teachers do they have at school? What,
Yep.
Yeah.
Do they see themselves like, I only saw Black people on TV getting arrested. I never had a Black doctor, a Black teacher, a Black neighbor. It was just my only exposure to Black people were troubled, right? And they watch Fox News. So it was like, that was my only experience of seeing other Black people. I'm like, oh, so, and then on top of that, they're saying, but you're going to be the good one. You're going to be my parents always used to say, because I always have been interested in politics. And they would always say, like, you're going to be the Republican Barack Obama. I think that is so hilarious. and it really does form your identity as well. I didn't truly, and I'm still unpacking my internalized racism, because living with essentially racist people make you internalize a lot of this. And there are old YouTube videos that you can go on my YouTube, and I'm like, hi, I'm Karlos. I'm a conservative gay atheist. Yeah. And now I watch it, I'm like, first of all, what does that mean?
Yeah, what did that mean to me then?
And then I try to be like, where was I in that time frame? I'm like, I was really in the middle of unpacking so much. Like, I was holding on, because to me, being conservative and Christian was the only right way to be.
To be a good person.
To be a good person.
That's right.
And then now when I unpacked, you can be gay and an atheist and not be conservative, or you can be a conservative and not be an atheist.
Still have morals and values.
Exactly.
I was raised, my grandma, speaking of politics and labels and how deeply they impact you, especially in childhood when you're always listening and adults kind of think maybe you're not picking up on all that. My grandma had she was like Tea Party, so like the furthest right that you can get, like true constitutionalist, not even Republican. And she had someone working on her roof or something that was she found out they were a Democrat, and mid-job asked them to stop working. And when, she was debriefing with the family about it, she just said, because it's impossible for me with the values and ethics, if they vote that way, to trust them in doing work on my home. And, as an 8-year-old, I was like, there's nothing worse, nothing shadier than a Democrat. Like, you hear that loud and clear. Like, children are always absorbing and internalizing. And me as a white person in a white family, politics aside, like, picking up and absorbing that, it wasn't about me, it was always about others. And to be a Black child in a predominantly white home, white neighborhood, white community, it's you are the problem. Trying to find ways to not be you.
So what you do
so that
is
you'll be enough, liked.
What you do is in that situation.
Extreme. You're extreme.
Yeah. So people are like, Karlos, why you always bring up race? Because literally it was my entire, well, honestly, it's our whole, everything in our country goes back to it, but it was my whole life. I was always the Black kid that they saved. I was always the little Black boy. And then also, you should be grateful to these people. So
They're going to give you a life.
Up until 10 years ago,
you had no chance.
I would never speak ill about white people.
Yeah.
I would never be like, I would never, because I'm like, these people are given, at least we're not slaves. What? Like, I've literally said, and then now, as a 30-year-old, I'm like, literally bare minimum. Like, it's really, and that's why I refuse to be palatable. I refuse, like now, because
no,
it's
sense.
like anything in abuse. I just did a complete, I did a 180.
But that's healing. That's healing. And you have to go through these cycles, and you may reach a next new revolution of like, I'm going to approach it from some different angles again. But that ability and freedom to just like have at it in ways that you had restrained and removed from yourself for your entire identity is a healing process to go through.
And the funny thing is also, 98% of my following is women, and about 75% of them are white. And it's like, I don't know how, like, I'll literally be there like, I don't like white people, go away. And I'm like, we're here.
They want to know why. That's good.
Like, literally, I'm just like, well, damn, I can't get rid of you, so I might as well educate you. And I was just like, why are you here? Like, if a person was just like, I don't like it, go away, I'd be like, okay, girl, I'm going away. But they're like, no, why? Because I think a lot of them are like you. How can I grow? Why do you feel like that? Tell me more. And now I'm starting to realize that, because I'm like, why is my following so white? And it's like, because you address, they want to learn.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing. Like, a conversation like this would have done well for me growing up.
Well, I am so, so happy that you were able to sit with us, Karlos. I'd love to hear about your book again. And then also, if anyone wants to follow you and learn from you on TikTok and on Instagram, go ahead and let us know where they can find you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Courtney and Gina and Drew. Thank you guys for having me. I really love what you guys are doing here, and I was really excited when you reached out to have me come on. You guys can follow me everywhere on all social medias at Ward of the State, Ward of the State 1.0 on Instagram. My name's Karlos Dillard with a K, so if you're looking up my name, just make sure you spell it with a K. My book is available. It's called Ward of the State, A Memoir of Foster Care. That's available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, anywhere physical books are sold. I also did a ebook and an audiobook where I narrate it. So if you're more of an audiobook listener, you can listen to my lovely voice tell it. Actually, people love the audiobook because they said that I read. I just thought I was reading it. I did, but like, no, Karlos, you're the
like animated.
Yeah, like, and then like when I'm sad, I'm like, oh, I'm sad because I actually I'm remembering the emotions of being there, just compared to like reading it. So it's a really great listen. If you love podcasts and you're watching this, I also have a podcast where I interview adoptees and former foster youth, and it is called Wards of the State. I'm great at marketing. Just keep everything the same. Wards of the State. And what I did was I named it and kind of made it after my book. So it's because not every adoptee or foster youth it's expensive to write a book. It's expensive to, and timely to create a platform. But I do believe that every story, good, bad, or indifferent, needs to be heard from people with lived experience. So what I did was I made a podcast, which was like a mini version of a book for someone. Like, so they come on my page and they get the 1 hour to share all of their stories and experiences uninterrupted with a person who knows and understands what they're going through. You can listen to that wherever podcasts are played. And lastly, if you just want to know like more about me, you can check me out on any of social medias at Word of the State, or my website is karlosdillard.com.
Well, yay.
Yay!
you.
Oh my gosh, what an honor and joy. This is so
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you. I really love this conversation. But no, thank y'all so much. And
Thank you.
I'm really excited to see who y'all have on next. And
Yay.
it's just the growth. This is just amazing. Y'all should see the studios. Like, I feel like I'm in Hollywood. She got a green room with snacks and stuff. She got
I'm
nice
a mom
lotions.
of 5. I will always have snacks.
Always snacks.
Snacks. Of course, I got lotion. Everyone knows how obsessed I am with lotion and chapstick and everything. I'm not letting anybody go hungry in here. You want a snack?
No, I'm good. She fed me before we even started. So
See, I am a mom for through and through.